space stuff. It feels like liftoff. Hello guys, it's Wednesday. A little late today. We're gonna say 1:10, Real Simple Cooking School. I'm your teacher, Dawn. Today, we're making toaster pastries, specifically pumpkin spice toaster pastries. I don't know how fall got this deep. I mean, it's the end of October, Halloween's next week. These are super easy, super fun. We're also gonna talk about puff pastry best practices. I feel passionate about it, I hope you do too. Let's quickly review the rules. 1, we wash our hands. I'm actually gonna do that now. And 2, we play nice. If you don't have anything nice to say, you are now dismissed. This is a constructive teaching kitchen and we aim to keep it that way. So if you wanna play nice, let's get going. Okay, I'm gonna wash my hands and start talking about puff pastry. Puff pastry, as opposed to like a regular pie dough, also known as a pâté brisé, is laminated. That means it has layers. So you think about other layered pastries like croissants or danishes, you know, things with all those flakes and very, very tender. That's what we're talking about. Puff pastry is a thing that, yes, you can make yourself. I'm gonna say it's not worth it. It takes like 3 days, a literal pound of butter or more, and it just requires a lot of tending. If you want to do it, go for it. It's not something I make at home. I'm impatient that way. Before I do this, let's talk about it. So this is good old Pepperidge Farm brand. This box comes 2 sheets per box. This is great, it's very convenient, it's very reliable. I also like Dufour brand, it's an all butter puff pastry. Really, really nice flavor. One thing to keep in mind, and I'm gonna say there's no way around this, defrost it according to the package directions. Those will be different, but it really makes a difference. The Pepperidge Farm brand asks you to defrost at room temperature, unwrapped, for 40 minutes. That's it. And honestly, it's been like probably 45 minutes and it's just about perfect. More than that, and the butter or whatever fat they're using in the pastry will melt too much. It'll be very soft and very hard to work with. Plus it'll start to stick to itself. And that is hard and frustrating and scary, and that's not the point. So, you're gonna defrost according to package directions, and now we're gonna roll it. So, puff pastry is great to keep on hand. 1, because it feels kind of fancy, so last minute entertaining, last minute guests, whip out a piece of puff pastry, smear it with mascarpone, and dump a bunch of strawberries on it, instant dessert. Press it into a pie shell, fill it with eggs, like a quiche, instant kind of fancy dinner moment. What we're gonna do today are these really easy ham pies. We're gonna use canned pumpkin, because it's the season, but you could use apples, you could use berries when it's that time, but I'm just gonna show you how to prep these for that. So we're gonna use both sheets in this case, and I'm just gonna unfold to see how we're doing. This is just about perfect. See how easily it unfolds? And it's firm still. Even in the middle, it's like maybe a tad firm, but I'm just gonna use the warmth of my hands to encourage it open. And see how they've put these little parchment strips in between? That's to make sure that the pastry doesn't stick to itself. And with all doughs, if you start going and it's sticky, it's hard to work with, stick it back in the fridge or the freezer, let it firm up a little bit, and then it'll be easier to roll with. Okay, I'm just gonna move this tray aside. Let's talk about a lightly floured surface. We've talked about this a lot this week, not that you guys were here the whole time, but when you're flouring your surface, you don't just wanna I'll show you here, you don't just wanna do this and rub it around. See how this is very uneven and it's like a sandy kind of mess? That's not what we wanna do. Put that there. Instead, you wanna throw your flour kinda like you're skipping a stone. That was the analogy we came up with, and I think it's actually apt. So, palm up, flexible wrist, and you're just gonna toss and open your hand as you go. See this? Beautiful. It's a little clumpy here, but very, very thin layer there. We'll give it one more. And the reason, you don't want to introduce too much more flour that's going to make the dough tough, and that's not what we're going for. Okay, 1 sheet at a time. Down on the floured surface, give it a turn so both sides are lightly dusted with flour. back over. Give it one more quick flour on top. And then we're just going to roll this to a 16 by 16 inch square. Don't worry about it. We're just, the directions in this recipe, Jerry, drop the link, calls for, there's like a lot of measuring involved. Don't stress. We're aiming for 16 total squares to make 8 hand pies. Does that make sense? For top and a bottom for each one. So as always, when we're rolling dough, you want to start from the middle and work outwards. So don't rush it. Start here, outside, from inside out toward you, and then turn it. Like, this is a very awkward motion, even for me, and I rolled a lot of dough. So instead, I'm just going to pick it up, turn it, and we'll go the other way, say away and toward myself. And nice and even pressure. This is what did we decide this was called? A roller style rolling pin, like very fancy name, versus a rod style that doesn't have handles. Whatever you're more comfortable with, that's the rolling pin you should use. I happen to have been using this one more recently, but I like both. And just like your chef's knife, whatever's most comfortable for you, that's the one I want you to use. Okay, so like we're going for square. This is, taking me to a rectangle place. That's okay. We're just going to aim for cutout squares, or at least shapes of the same size. And like with all dough, I just want to come back, lift up the edges to make sure it's not sticking. And the other thing is, and this is sort of, it just takes practice, is confidence. Quick movements, don't dilly-dally. I'm going to flip this. Ready? 1, 2, 3. So don't fuss around, just do it. The more you work with the dough, the more confident you'll become, I promise. Okay, so for this, let's consider this sheet the bases of my hand pies. See, I can already feel this piece of dough. It's getting a little sticky. We've got to work fast. So let's see if I can get, I think I can get 9 out of this. Let's do it. You could use a pizza cutter to do this, or just a sharp knife. So 9 roughly same size squares. And I'm just going to transfer them to the parchment lined sheet. Parchment, really dough's best friend. It won't stick. Even if you're like, this is sticky when you're working with it, I promise you it will release on the other side. We're going to need 2 sheets for this. But there's how many? 2, 4, 6, 7 of us, and 2 for friends. So 6 down here, I'll use this other sheet here. If you guys do a lot of baking, you can invest in parchment that comes already cut in the size of your standard half sheet tray. That's this. Especially around the holidays, if you're a person who starts making all their cookies now, I might go ahead and do it. It's definitely available on the internet. Okay, 6 here, I got 2 here. Let's go ahead and quickly roll this other one. I'm gonna redust this in the top here. Any questions as we're going along? Puff pastry, holiday baking, canned pumpkin.
Can you make these ahead?
Jerry wants to know, can you make these ahead? Yes. So in fact, I made some swaps, just like they do on the real cooking shows. I actually made them yesterday, and I kept them in the freezer, and I just baked them. So you can make them at least a day in advance. I would say any more than that, I didn't wrap them, just, laziness. But just make sure you wrap them nice and tight with plastic wrap. Once they're frozen very firm, you can transfer them to a resealable plastic bag, and they'll keep in there. I'd say if your freezer is good, which means like newish, they'll probably stay for like a month. Older freezers, less time. Okay, go on for another square. Or at this point, I just got to get 9 because I committed to 9 on the other one. Okay, looks pretty good. I will say pizza cutters are great to use because they won't tug at the dough. I don't know if you guys can see this, but The knife is tugging ever so slightly. These, I'm not looking for perfection. I mean, do I ever? So I'm not too worried about it, but if you're looking for perfect edges, use a pizza cutter. That'll work better. Okay. What do I have here? We're going for 9. Okay, so these are going to be my tops. Oh my gosh. Can you guys see if I put this here? I'm going to make the filling really quick. Super, super simple. This can be the base for really any hand pie that you want. Like I said, chop up some apples, toss them in just a little bit of flour to help absorb the juices, cinnamon, some sugar, pile those in the center. Do the same thing with fresh berries. In the summertime, that'll be great. We're just going to use canned pumpkin. Why? Because it's easy. It's already made for us, and it's going to be awesome. It's like a portable pumpkin pie. We were just talking about this before you guys joined us, about Libby's. I really like it, not Spawn. I'm just telling you what I think for reals. It's super consistent. It works the same every time I use it. And when in baking, like, I want predictable. I'm not trying to like guess, especially around the holidays. Okay, so 3/4 cup pure canned pumpkin. This is not pumpkin pie filling, which is already seasoned. We want to do that ourselves. So 3/4 cup, this is a 1 cup measure. I'm sorry, 1/4 cup measure. And most cans, most 15-ounce cans are about 1.5 cups. It's true for pumpkin. And I'm hoping this makes just enough to cover my 9 pies. So 3/4 cup of the pumpkin. I have a 1/4 cup of packed brown sugar. Light or dark, in this case, it doesn't really matter. Then we want a teaspoon of cinnamon. And we're going to stop there today, but if you wanted to take this to like a more pure pumpkin pie place, you could add a little ground ginger and a little nutmeg. The cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg thing, that's what makes pumpkin taste like pumpkin pie. And then a little bit of salt. Oh God. David's got it. A little bit of salt, it's just going to even things out. In the meantime, we'll just give this a stir. Question.
Can you use silicone mats?
Thanks, David.
Like those baking mats as opposed to parchment paper?
Good question. Jerry asked, could I use a silicone mat? Silpat makes one. Yes, absolutely, you could use that. We actually get a lot of questions about Silpat. I love them for baking. Don't necessarily love them for like high heat stuff. But this is definitely a time to use them. Okay, that's it. So simple. Pumpkin, cinnamon, a little bit of salt, light brown sugar, good to go. Now we just have to build them. Now, I don't think the recipe technically says this, but I'm going to do it because I like to play it safe. I'm just going to brush the edges with a little egg. That's going to help create a seal so the filling won't leak out. So I'm even just going to use my pastry brush to break it up, and I'm just going to brush the edges.
We have another question.
Question.
So someone can't do sugar, or Chris says she can't do sugar, so can she use Splenda instead?
Yeah, you know, I think I've talked about this. I'm not a big fan of Splenda. I just don't like the aftertaste, but this is a case where it'll work fine. I think Splenda makes like a 1-to-1 product that you can sub directly for sugar, so that would work. You could also use, I don't know if maple syrup is an option, but yeah, this is not a case where the sugar substitute will affect the sciencey part of the baking like it would in a cake or a cookie or something. Okay, I've brushed just the edges. I'm gonna divide my pumpkin mixture among my squares, and it's actually easier to do this all at once rather than like build one, top it, and move on, because I can see that I'm dividing the pumpkin mixture exactly right. I can always add more if I have it, but I think I'm gonna nail it. Maybe not, maybe I have to go back and take some away, but we're gonna be close. Do you guys see how easy this is? Super fun way to incorporate seasonal stuff into super simple baking. Okay, now I just want to spread this out. Leave yourself a little border, maybe a little more than you think. When you put the top on, some of that filling could squish out and it can be kind of a mess. So give yourself a little bit of a safeguard there. At least 1/2 inch, I'm gonna say 3/4. But just flatten that out a little bit. And these are easy enough that like the kids can help. They could definitely do the pumpkin mixing part. They could definitely do the egg brushing part. So all you really need to do is like cut the dough. And then you just lay your squares on top. Again, if I were being like super fussy, I could go back and trim the edges so they lined up perfectly, but I mean, these guys will eat it, right? They all giggled because it's true. So I'm just, see this one, I lost some out of the edge. It's okay. But I'm just giving them a little press to help it stick. And then I'm gonna go back and just use a fork. 1, because it's pretty, and 2, it's gonna reinforce that seal. Is anyone hosting Halloween parties? We talk about that a lot at work, but I'm not sure that anyone does it. We just like ordered a pizza and went trick-or-treating. Oh, bouncy. And when I do the last one, there's one other thing we've got to do. We're gonna crimp the edges with a fork, and then we want to vent the top. Anytime you're filling dough like this and not giving the steam an escape route, they could bust. So, and that's when you'll get explosions along the side. I'm just gonna show you, if you wanted to trim, you could just do like this. Again, pizza cutter would be nice because it wouldn't stick, just rolls right along. But you just wanna give it a little vent. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, whatever you like, 1, 2, 3, 4. Nothing special, you just wanna give the steam a place to go. And then we grab a fork. I'm just dip it in my little flour. That looks naughty. Okay, and then just right around the edges. Any questions? Docking, puff pastry, pumpkin pie.
No, but everyone's saying brilliant.
Brilliant. This is actually a recipe by our friend Rebecca Pepler, who has a new book out called Aperitif, all about cocktail hour the French way. Jerry, maybe you can drop a link to Rebecca's book. What? Aperitif. Available everywhere books are sold. No, but Rebecca, this is a great idea. We appreciate you and are excited for your book release. Da, 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 da. You can make ham pies with regular pie dough. They will be, and you'll see when I take the other ones out of the oven, less dramatic because it won't puff as much. That's why they call it puff pastry, you guys, because it puffs. Okay, those are all docked. But the method is exactly the same. This one is my best one, I think. Well, let me show you actually a cute other way to dock this. It goes for pie too. I'll use this guy. No, I'm gonna use a regular spoon. So you guys are used to crimping with a fork, pretty standard, but you can also use a spoon. It's a little hard when it's on the sheet, but same thing, you just go around and you get a really pretty scalloped edge. So cute, right? Now, before we pop these in the oven, I'm going to stick them in the freezer. Again, I think the recipe technically says refrigerator. Anytime I'm working with dough, like not all cookies, but especially anything I want to hold its shape, so a edge of a pie, these pretty guys, sugar cookies especially, I really think it's best to freeze it first and freeze until firm. What that means is once the pastry hits the oven, the butter's going to be cold, 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 so it's going to take longer for it to melt, meaning it's going to hold its shape better. So I'm going to stick these in the freezer. This is the fridge, but I'll move it to the freezer later. You guys get the idea. You just want to get it cold and firm. Let's wipe this down. But I'm going to say 30 minutes is ideal. You can kind of cheat it in the freezer for 15 minutes, but 30 minutes is a sure thing. Or again, overnight, like I did last night. But because I'm smart, occasionally, I did bake some ahead of time. Question.
If you don't eat all of them after you're done, can you reheat them in the toaster?
Good question. If I don't eat all of them, can I reheat them in the toaster? Here's the thing. Because of the puffiness, like this wouldn't fit in my home toaster. I would suggest reheating in the oven. And what I might do is heat it right on the oven rack. That way the bottom won't get soggy. So I would say store it at room temp versus the refrigerator, because the refrigerator can cause things to get soggy. Tightly wrapped at room temp and then pop it in the oven 350, I'm going to say 5 to 10 minutes. So anyway, here are some finished pastries. Can you guys see the difference here? Very, very shiny versus sort of matte. That's because I brushed these with a little egg. I just wanted you to see the difference. This is always an option with cookies, with pie crust, with puff pastry. Totally optional. It does not really affect flavor. It just makes for a very shiny top. But I have a special topping for these guys, and I think you're gonna like it. So we're just gonna make a really simple cream cheese glaze. Yes, right? It's just cream cheese frosting, but a little thinner. So for this, we're gonna go 2 ounces of cream cheese. This is an 8-ounce bar, right? So half would be 4 and a quarter of it would be 2. See how I don't really have to measure? I can just kind of eyeball it. Here's the thing about cream cheese. If I'm using it in this kind of frosting icing scenario or cheesecake, I really want it to be room temperature. Otherwise, you will get little clumps. I know because I've done it 100 times and I've tried to shortcut it and it doesn't work. Not even if you push it through a fine mesh strainer, just give it time. If you're committed to it, pull it out the night before. I did, and then you're definitely gonna be at room temp. That's a good tip also if you're making any kind of cake. When I was working in restaurants, we used to make a cake kit the night before, so butter was at room temp, eggs were at room temp, and it's all getting baked on the other side anyway, so you don't have to freak out that it's gonna kill you. It's cake. Okay, so I've got 2 ounces of cream cheese. I have 2 tablespoons of powdered sugar. We'll do a pinch of salt just because, like, it's pretty sweet. And then we've got a tablespoon of butter melted. It, like, firmed up a little bit, but that's actually okay. And that's it. I'm just going to mash this together. Again, I think the directions say to do this with an electric mixer. You don't have to. You can just stir it together in a bowl, and you just want to make sure all those sugar lumps are smooth and evenly worked in to the cream cheese and the butter. But guys, this is like a basic cream cheese frosting anyway. If I was making it for a cake, I'd use room temp butter, not melted butter. And actually, I might like stick it in the fridge when I was done, just so it firmed a little bit, but it's that easy. Instead of the sugar, you could use a little brown sugar or half brown sugar and half powdered sugar, or like a little bit of maple syrup for extra flavor, or a splash of vanilla, that would be good. I'm just working out the lumps here. I'm not doing anything fancy. And this is a small batch, but I think it'd be just enough for our 6 here. If you wanted more of like a drizzleable icing versus spreadable, you can just add a little whole milk or cream. But a little bit at a time, a little bit. Anytime you're working with powdered sugar like this, it goes to liquid like that. So you can always add more powdered sugar. It's but it takes very little liquid. Okay, this looks pretty good, right? You know what else is good that I was just eating? This on graham crackers. So if you ever just need like a quick hit, kind of a special feeling snack that was really easy, do this. Okay, and then you just spread it on top. If you do this while these are still warm, it will like kind of melt and be awesome. But we're just gonna do it like this. What do you think? Are you guys gonna make these?
Everyone in the comments says these look delicious.
Everyone in the comments is doing it. Any other questions about cream cheese frosting, puff pastry, holiday baking? I didn't put vanilla in, but you definitely can.
Dawn, I have a question.
Question from the room. What's up?
Is there a difference in how non-butter puff pastry and butter puff pastry work, or are they pretty much the same?
David asks, is there a difference between how all butter puff pastry and this, which is not all butter, behave? Like, generally speaking, no. I find you get better lift from the all butter puff pastries. Again, that could be environmental factors, just like the weather and whatever else. But the idea is that they all behave the same.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And as always, like, you know, all butter is going to have great flavor. But again, anytime you're using a product that's been used this often over this many years, it's gonna work. And that is all there is to it. Guys, now if you are gonna make these ahead, don't ice them until right before you eat them, because that'll start to sog. Remember, anytime you introduce moisture, it'll take you to sog town. Okie doke. Guys, you wanna try these? Yes, everyone in the room wants to. Guys, these are super easy. I mean, that was 28 minutes. Granted, we didn't like actually bake them. 30 minutes, 350 until they're golden brown. But it's like, that was a 20-minute project. Stick them in the oven, clean up, hang out, have a nice cup of tea, and then warm pastry on the other end. Guys, have a great week. I'll see you in a couple weeks. Happy Halloween. Save me some candy. I especially like the fun-size Snickers, okay? All right, bake something yum. I'll see you soon. So long.